Markus van Alphen, and he's an author that's going to talk about his book, The Excellent Leader. Thanks for stopping by, Markus. I'm just really excited about this conversation because anytime when you discuss leadership, it gets me excited because what I think about each and every day is how I can grow my business, how I can become a better leader for my team, how can I be a better leader for my clients, all those different things. So we're going to jump right in. First of all, what inspired you to write this book, and what about excellent leadership, and what problem were you hoping to solve for leaders today?
Yeah, so a double question. So what inspired me to write this book is basically I'm a psychologist, and I've been a counseling psychologist for a lot of my working career. And that made that I got a lot of clients in my counseling practice who were burnout or victims of a toxic leadership or toxic work environment. So I saw really the not so good side of leadership. And this really inspired me to look at, hey, basically the impact of a leader on their personality is so huge. Is there a better way? And I believe there is. And this is really what inspired me to start writing about the excellent leader.
No doubt, because you think about things, Markus, is basically how to be an excellent leader. And what do you define leadership? Define leadership for me.
This is the thing. I think that a lot of us still work on the basis of an old myth on leadership. A leader is not somebody who tells people what to do. That might have been true a long time ago when things were all automated. You had to sit on a production line and screw in the same screw 10 times a day, or whatever it was you were doing. It's not the same. These days, what are we doing is we're employing people because they have certain expertise. And they have expertise which we don't have. Well, that's why we employ them. So it's not about telling them what to do because they're the ones with the expertise. So our job as a leader is to support them in such a way that they can just do their work and do excellent work and do beautiful work and do what really they get out of bed for every day.
So how do we build that motivation? Because lots of people aren't motivated by money, Markus. So, a lot of times the entrepreneur or the CEO, yes, money does drive them, success, huge results. But when you put yourself in a position and on a team, how do you motivate that employee through your leadership to want to stay with your company, to want to stay for a certain amount of time? Because the problem is we think it's the days of we're just going to just work them to death. We're going to look at the old school mentality. When I looked at 20, 25 years ago, it just doesn't work that way.
No, but we also have a lot of science that already just shows that money, the use of money as a motivator, I think Daniel Pink says it beautifully. He says the use of money as a motivator, or the best use of money as a motivator, is to pay people enough to get the subject of money off the table so that they're working for the job. Now, they're working for what they've been employed for. They're not working for the money anymore. Because there's a lot of research that just shows that people, yes, of course, we need to earn a salary, but that's not what motivates us.
No. Yeah. And I think that I look at what I do, if I'm striving for growing the company just because I'm a competitor that wants to become better. I always want to improve, but what gives me the most satisfaction is helping people, seeing things grow.
In a way, the bottom line can be an indicator of how much you've helped people. That's a different way of looking at it. Then the money is actually a metric to show you how successful you've been in doing your mission. That's a different way of looking at it.
Interesting.
If it was purely about money, I would have stayed with my first job, to be quite honest.
But it doesn't give you the satisfaction. So this is the lucky thing I have every day to wake up and be able to create a business, which is almost a job. If you're looking at it, I have a small team, that to create something that I love because it's different every day. I don't have to answer to certain people. My clients are all my bosses, but yes. But to ultimately,
to a certain extent too.
It's only to a certain, yeah.
Because if your clients start asking you things that are completely beyond what you are either capable or willing to give,
They can't control me at all because
that's also time to say, I'm sorry, but goodbye.
And I can go find somebody else. That's a very
I'm sure
good
you'll
point.
find exactly.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So here's another question. Your book emphasizes that your team members take you home with them. And I totally believe this. What does that idea mean, and why is it so important for leaders to understand?
Basically, if you think about it, how much time do you spend with your partner, with your family, with your friends per day? How much time do you spend with your colleagues and your work people per day? Okay, so hang on. For most people, that means they spend more time at work than they spend on any other activity whatsoever. So actually, it's a no-brainer. If you have an SH1T day at work, who are you gonna complain to about this?
And if you complain to your spouse, you're not going to be married long, or you're not going to be with that person long.
Unless they like complaining, which could be exactly why you're together. But it's not really the formula for a very happy marriage or a very happy relationship. So I don't know. I believe that if we treat people well, and that doesn't only mean the way the leader treats the people, it also means the interactions with other team members, for which I believe the team lead is also responsible. You're responsible to support the people so that they can do their work, which means you support them so that they're happy, really. Because there's also this much research that shows us that happy employees perform better. It's no rocket science.
And what do you see in your research? And this, I'm jumping to this because I see with the evolution of AI, and also the cutbacks because people overhired during COVID has made it very stressful, especially in the corporate world, for people to work for companies now. They don't feel as valued. They feel they're overworked, and they're also looking over their shoulder all the time.
Of course.
Is that going to lead to good performance? The answer is
no, of course not. So this is also what I've discussed on the previous podcast with somebody else, was this whole idea of a lot of us still live in this old paradigm. In order to get people to perform or to change their behavior or whatever you want to call it, we should instill fear into them. And if you know anything about biology, you realize that's not going to work.
If you're in a state of fight and flight, you're never going to perform well.
No, you're going to get the opposite. You're going to get the bare minimum of the performance that's necessary.
And I see this when I'm brought in as a consultant to a team that has employees and can feel their nerves where they see I'm a threat. And I'm like, no, I'm not a threat. I want you to perform better and help you with those skills and the skill sets I'm really great at. You guys continue. Don't see me as a threat. And it's interesting. They'll probably listen to probably some of them subscribe to the podcast and are saying, I wonder what he's talking about. But the key thing is, we all have gifts and talents. And if we can feel rewarded through our talents and gifts, and we feel like this is something special and not feel threatened. But I think
this is also this whole discussion of AI. AI is technology. Technology is there to make our lives easier. People who say we shouldn't use AI, I say, okay, do you take a shower every morning? Because that's technology too.
And then the way it before we weren't taking showers, before we were, what about the horse and buggy? Oh, we're getting rid of the horses now. What are we going to do?
To me, that's a non-discussion. To me, AI is there to help us. So the question isn't, is it there? The question is, how do we use it? And that does mean that certain work is just going to become redundant. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. It's going to be the boring work that becomes redundant.
And it's the boring work that people are going to end up doing. They're not doing anymore. AI is going to be doing. And I'm seeing this firsthand where, oh my gosh, I got AI to create 30 posts for myself. Didn't have to do any work, but I had to oversee it. But ultimately, I had to put in the text box what I wanted.
Exactly.
And how many people really wanted to be social media managers of the company? No, they want to be thought leaders. But how do we, as employees, understand this learning curve as leaders and teach them that you're going to feel more rewarded by doing something that really you feel value?
I think we really come back to this whole idea of how do we create a culture where we aren't behaving or aren't acting out of fear, but are acting out of courage. because those two are emotions that lie very close to each other, yet they have a completely different effect on our brain. So with fear, we're going into this defensive fight, flight, freeze mode. And with courage, we're actually keeping all our blood vessels stay relaxed and open. We get all the energy, and we can use that energy to approach the challenge. And I believe once we can get that shift, that mindset shift, hey, hang on, to be courageous, what do we need to be courageous? And now we come to another leadership question. How do you create a culture in which you allow your team members to be courageous? You allow them to take risks.
We have to do this in education. As a former teacher myself, we have to now no longer, we have to really look at them as creators in class to understand, you're not competing with your other classmates. You have your gifts and talents, and how can you raise the bar? Because it's not going to be grades per se for 80% of the world. It's of the population. It's going to be about 20% that get to that certain level and that certain nuance. But what about everyone else that could be the next thought leader, next anything because of AI? So this is when I love when you say creators, but we have to go to our young people today and say, you have to have value in what you do. And if you don't,
as soon as we say you have to have value,
that's a force. That's a force.
We're imposing something on them, and they're going to rebel and say, I'm sorry, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe without the words, I'm sorry. But
yeah, I got it. So how has leadership changed in today's workplace compared to traditional leadership style many organizations used in the past?
I think the changes still have to be made. I don't think they've
been made yet enough.
They haven't been made yet. I believe we are still too locked into the old paradigms, the old myths, punishment, reward, whereas I believe that the new paradigm has to be around this idea of courage, and for your employees to behave in a courageous way, there's a certain ground condition that's necessary, and that's psychological safety. And that's something I believe we can train our current leaders in, is how to create a more psychologically safe space in order to give people the opportunity to try these things, to give them the space to be innovative, to give them the space to be courageous. Because you're not going to try to do something if you know you're going to get your head chopped off. Come on.
But this is what I'm hearing, especially listening to some of these podcasts. And I'll give you an example, a marketing school podcast. Neil Patel is one of the top marketers agencies in the world. And he talks about stressing people out at Saturdays and Sundays. Eric Sue, and I'm just bringing these people up, just name dropping. Maybe we'll see what virality comes from this in a clip or something. They are talking about, I'm only looking at a certain person that I want to work for my organization. And they talk about agency thinking. And that's, we want agency learners. That can't be forced upon. It's just, it's ingrained. Do you think it's born?
No, it's not born. It is something you can develop. This is the thing that a lot of research has also shown. For example, empathy. A lot of people say you're born with empathy or you're
not true.
That's not true. People can develop their empathy. It is a trainable skill. Even people with a good empathy can train it to become even better. That's not really the issue. To me, the issue is a lot more basic. Why do we want to have certain talents in our organization? Because they've got that talent.
Right.
And we want them because we want to do something on this planet of ours. We have this mission statement, or the why, as Simon Sinek calls it, or the golden circle idea. We have this, why are we as an organization even existing? Because we want to do something.
Right.
And here we come with this agency idea. Everybody, as far as I'm concerned, whether they think of this consciously and deliberately or not, has their own why. Why am I on this planet? What am I here to do? What is it that's going to get me jumping up out of my bed every morning and saying, let's go?
And some days, even if you enjoy it like that, you don't jump out of your bed and say, let's go.
Yeah, sometimes if you have a hangover, you say, today I'm going to stay in bed.
or you're tired and you say, I got to sleep more. I guess that's a luxury of entrepreneurship. But
the thing about agency is actually not so much, is it there, isn't it there? It's there already. So it's more a question of how do I align? How do I align that? How do I put out to the world, me as an organization, what am I here to do? What is my message to the world? Why do I exist? Wow. And you will attract the people who say, hey, I like that message. That resonates with who I am.
And when I've hired subcontractors, because I've never had a full-time employee in my days of running it, because I'm still, I guess, that solopreneur, even though I want to be more, I'm learning in this process. But the thank goodness is I understand there's the ups and downs of life that bring you there. But ultimately, when I would hire people, I could see they were so excited to work for me because I was excited they were coming to work for me. My mistake was spending more time with them, and then I do client facing, not have them client face. So I could really mold them and motivate them to see that there was a reason they enjoyed. A lot of them studied not marketing, and they were working as a waiter or waitress or working in somewhere else and not do their career, what they truly love, why they went to school for.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So you talk about the importance of why in leadership. Why is understanding purpose so powerful for both leaders and employees?
Actually, this is what we're actually already just talking about. The why of the organization, the mission.
In our conversation, I'm just trying to stick to those questions too, in a way. But but I'll dive it deeper into that whole why.
Sure.
But what about, especially for a leader? Because they have to have a why.
This is what I'm saying is everybody at every single layer of the organization has a personal why. Every section of the organization has a why, every unit or whatever you want to call it, department. And the organization as a whole has a why. So it's about really how do these various whys align with one another? Because the better they are aligned, as far as I'm concerned, the easier it is for people to perform.
Absolutely.
Because one of the tasks I believe we still believe leaders have is that we are there to motivate our people.
Yeah.
And I believe that's the biggest BS I've heard. We're not there to motivate them. They're already pitching up for it. They're motivated already.
I could talk to you for an hour, and we don't have an hour, Marcus, on this podcast, but this is one I would love, because listening to you says, here's the mistake, and you have to create a revolution in so many ways. And I think it's the perfect timing. This book coming out is perfect timing for one reason, because of AI, because we're adding a new component into our technology. We really have to have conversations. I was on a sales calls yesterday with somebody who was looking to bring me into the business to consult. And what I learned in that conversation was there are a lot of missing parts in an organization that's really successful, but still doesn't have that why. So that's really interesting. And then you could feel it in the morale as well.
Well, it boils down again, if the individual on the work floor isn't feeling happy, enabled, empowered, etc., aligned with their reason for their existence, you're going to get mediocre performance.
No doubt. So this is a really good one. You emphasized communication is the heart of leadership. I just talked about my mistakes with my team that I had to let go because I wasn't scaling right, that I brought one person back from that my communication skills with my team is not as good as my communication with my clients. And communication is the heart of leadership, but I think leadership working with clients is part of the leadership as well. What are the biggest communication mistakes leaders make?
I believe we've been taught that communication is about sending. I believe it's not about sending, it's about receiving. So if we could stop thinking of communication as I'm busy sending my messages, I'm busy convincing you that I have the right idea, blah, 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 and listen more carefully, I believe we align with the needs of our client, even if we're in sales, with our team member, if we're just working internally in the team. And just by aligning better with somebody, really getting who they are, it's so much easier.
Yeah. It is. And you're making me reflect in so many ways when I go to that next level. And even when we're going to be talking to particular people moving forward, that's interesting. Okay, so listening is a leadership tool. Your book discusses observational listening. How can leaders become better listeners and stronger relationships with their teams? And I think one of my biggest skill sets is listening because of being a podcast or radio host that's done over 20,000 interviews. I just have to do better at spending that time listening to what they want.
Again, listening is difficult simply because we haven't been brought up with it. We've been brought up with this idea the silence is awkward, for example. As soon as there's a silence, what do? Fill it up. Which means that we've been brought up to tell people what to do instead of ask them. So yeah, really getting to this observational listening thing, I'm saying just hearing what people say is one thing. Hearing what they mean is the second thing. This is what we call active listening. And getting what their experience is, that's what observational listening is about. Yeah. So that's the layer deeper. So what observational listening is about, if I truly can listen to what somebody is telling me and not only understand their words, I also understand their meaning, but I also understand what their experience is. Hey, this gives me a lot of information which I can seamlessly use in my communication in order to get better performance.
Yeah, better performance. So important because that's what we are in for business, because we have to perform and make money and have our staff perform well. There's multiple things.
Yet it's in a sustainable way.
Yes,
because we don't want to make a lot of money today and be poor in a year's time. So we want to create something which is sustainable. And I think that's where the difference is between using fear-based approach and a courage-based approach, for example. What about courage is based on sustainability. You want to be able to do this for the next 20 years.
We know all these startup AI companies have tons of money, right? This is where I can go into. And they hire all these people and they were looking for the big thing, but maybe that business is never going to make money. It's all funded by somebody else. That is the other fear-based process. If you're working with a startup right now that has the potentiality of being really successful, but there's no guarantee and you're under this kind of pressure, that's the other thing. Feeling safe is another human. Yeah.
You've probably invested from a FOMO point of view, which stands for fear of missing out.
Yeah.
So it's the wrong reason.
So why do you think this book is such a good book for, I think it's for both the employee and the employer. I think it's because there's leadership in so many, I think it truly is because it's really touching upon. So why should people think about this as a good book to purchase?
Basically, the idea of this whole observational listening thing started in a therapeutic environment where I was training therapists to be better communicators. And I noticed quite quickly that people's conversations didn't only change in their therapeutic conversations, but also amongst colleagues, also at home. So I began to realize that this is actually a far broader concept than just something that psychologists need to learn to be able to have good conversations with their clients. And from that point of view, the next step was what we call personal leadership. Because the companies I was interacting with, a lot of them were high-tech companies. Now, in a high-tech company, you've got a lot of people, extremely expensive people who have beautiful knowledge, skills, etc., etc. And there's not a leader amongst them who can know everything of these people. So people had to learn how to be a leader, as in how do I create the correct amount of influence when it is necessary. So this idea of personal leadership actually goes a layer deeper than the leadership idea. So that's also why I believe it's true or it's useful for anybody. I believe the conversations we learn and the conversation skills we learn we can apply in any conversation we have, whether private or for work-related things.
I completely agree with you. This has been a fascinating conversation. One class for advice for leaders, because we are all leaders. I think this is something else I learned in this podcast today. You could be in a smaller position, but you're still leading a team of 5 people. You might not be big in an organization of 20,000, but you're leading those specific people.
Yeah, or you're not leading at work, but you're leading at home.
Yeah. That is another place. Yeah.
Or you're leading at the sports club or whatever it is. It really, to me, leadership is in everything.
For someone who's just starting their leadership journey, what is the most important mindset they should develop?
I think the most important mindset is vulnerability. This idea of it's okay if I don't know everything. Because if you think about it, there's a very nice saying. It says, it's not the destination, it's the journey. So if you already know everything, then you're already at the destination. What you going to do for the rest of your life?
This was a fascinating, I told you off air in the green room, I love talking this conversation because this doesn't feel like a chore to me. It's a topic I'm very intrigued about and I want to think about more. Where can people pick up your book, purchase it, and learn more about it? Where can they go?
I have the website's the easiest place. So it's just excellentleader.com. Everything they need is there. Also training courses there for people. They can do that on their own. I'm trying to get larger organizations interested in taking a package deal so that they can just make it available for all their employees, actually. So my idea is to basically get people not so much to read the book, but to practice what's written in it.
I could see this in conversations back and forth. How are we conducting leadership? And the way of the old leadership has to die, or will not, or I don't see the corporations surviving.
I think it will die a natural death. Just simply, London Business School crunched the numbers. What did they discover? People who not only preach corporate social responsibility, but practice it, they do 3 to 4% better on the bottom line every year. That means it's not bad for the bottom line. No, it's actually good for the bottom line. So when looking at it that way, it's a no-brainer. Why should you do this? Not because you're scared you're going to die as a company if you don't do this, but do it for a positive reason. Do it because you want to make more on the bottom line.
All right. I appreciate it, Marcus. Thanks again. All right. You're listening and watching The Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back.